There is a race going on in Yolo County. Now, Yolo County is up by Sacramento in California, and it's the district attorney seat there. And the candidate for district attorney is joining us now. He's Dean Johansson. And Dean, welcome to Rebel Headquarters. You're a guy with a lot of experience. You've been the deputy DA. I know you've worked for 20 years within the institutions of law there. And you have an interesting thing that you say. You call Yolo County the county of incarceration. Why do you, first of all, welcome, and why do you make that statement?
Well, it's a privilege to be here with you. I make that statement because historically, Yolo County has been one of the higher incarcerating counties in the state of California. We're currently at least in the top 14 for incarceration.
And so you're saying, and I know you've worked both prosecution and defense, I should make that point, in your 20 years. And so you're saying this, at least it sounds to me like you're saying the system is broken.
It is broken, absolutely. We have a system that, leads the world in incarceration. As far as the United States, California is one of the leading states, and Yolo is one of the leading counties in that state. Absolutely. There's a school-to-prison pipeline. For example, in the last 20 years in California, we've built 22 prisons, yet we've only built one campus of the University of California in the state.
It's such a progressive outlook. It's wild to speak to someone who's running for district attorney and hear this position, because I always associate the DA's office as the place that's going to send people behind bars.
Well, this is a movement. This isn't about me, it's about we. You look at Larry Krasner and what he's been able to do in Philadelphia. That was a great inspiration to me. And it isn't just this county. There are at least 5, 6 counties across California that have the same phenomena. So it really is, I think, something that needs to be, you need to pay attention to it, and you need to help those that are rising up to take the citadel. Realize that across the United States, the great majority, 85% of the prosecution races go unchallenged. So this is unusual. Since 1984 in Yolo, there has only been one contested race. That was in 2006 against the current prosecutor. The contender came within 4 percentage points of winning that election. Since then, there has not been anyone to contest the current prosecutor.
You spent 10 years as a criminal trial attorney there in Sacramento, and then you picked up a lot of civil rights cases defending farm workers there in the Central Valley region of California, where agriculture and the issues related to agriculture are so related to life there. Give us a sense of your background for those who may not be as familiar. That's just sort of a snapshot. What are you bringing to this moment?
Well, I've had quite a bit of experience, and I represented transgender women in the jail. That I also represented quite a cross-section of what I would consider to be political prisoners, demonstrators that were exercising their First Amendment rights and that were incarcerated. This is how I first came to interact with Yolo County. I represented 3 protesters from the University of Davis, UC Davis, and they were charged with a felony conspiracy to commit misdemeanors, which I had never been aware of could even be done before then. It's part of the overcharging that this particular county is known for. I've represented, I've worked in the prisons for 2 years. I did life or parole hearings there. I worked as a prosecutor in 2 counties. I did appellate work. And like I said, I worked as a public defender for a short while in San Francisco. I worked here as a public defender for the last 11 years. I'm a Berniecrat. I, came from a background of social activism. I've been an ACLU board member here in Yolo for the last 15 years. I was even a board member of the NAACP in Sacramento. Before that, I worked on their legal redress committee. So I've had a wide cross-section. I've worked in at least probably 8 or 9 counties. And I can see that the system here is broke as I've seen it anywhere. So it's time for a change.
I I want to touch in a second on some of the changes that you're going to make. But before I do, you mentioned the cash bail system as being such a problem there, because the statistics where you will, we hope, become the new district attorney, you're facing a situation where many people go unsentenced. They're jailed and unsentenced because they simply can't afford the cash bail.
It's absurd. Whoever thought it made sense for the rich to be able to buy their way out of jail and the poor to sit there and rot just because they can't afford it. And this has nothing necessarily to do with whether or not they're a danger to the community or a flight risk. It matters, as far as the cash bail system is concerned, whether or not they have, rich relatives or they have money to pay for, to be released. And the big picture is there's a number of issues here that I think run throughout the issue. Number one is technology. We're still doing things like we did back in the 1600s. We have technology now, GPS ankle bracelets, for example, that can tell how fast you go when you're getting off the freeway. It can tell when you go to the refrigerator at night to get a carton of milk. There's no reason why we have to still use the same way of doing things that we did, back in when there were dungeons and this sort of thing. And the bottom line is that it's broke, it's unfair, and frankly, it's racist. If you want to know the truth of it, all you have to do is look at the numbers and see, for example, that it's poor people that are being criminalized, but it's the brown and black communities that are suffering the brunt of that criminalization. We have in Yolo County, if you're a black person, you're 10 times more likely to be incarcerated. If you're brown, you're twice as likely. So you see that those communities are suffering the most. And the poor sit there in jail. There's a presumption of, it's supposed to be a presumption of innocence, but you see them come in through the door or at least sit there with jailers around them. They've got frumpy clothes that have had to have been, found for them in the public defender's locker. They don't come and go with the juries out the door to the hallway. There's just so much that's pent up in the way of presumptions against them when they're in custody. Plus, their mail is read, their conversations are listened in onto. It does a horrible thing to them mentally to be caged up sometimes for years before they finally get to trial.
Well, the economic ripple effects too of the poverty associated with being incarcerated for long periods of time just extends itself further and further, compounds itself in effect. I want to ask you, Dean, the primary is coming up June 5th. What is the message of change that you have found that people most spark to, and what's the message of change that you found most important to get out?
Well, I think one that resonates with everyone is this idea of educate, don't incarcerate. Realize that $1 of education saves $5 in terms of recidivism. It's a win-win situation that you're into. And the other issue, for me at least, is transparency and accountability. We have to open up this information so that we can use science to actually go through the numbers, and you can see the areas that need to be addressed by doing that. But for various reasons, there's not the political will. Change is there. There are programs that work. Here in Yolo County, for example, we have a program called the Day Reporting Centers run through the Sacramento Office of Education. It has an upper 80 percentile success rate. They bring in labor and they teach these folks how to get a trade, a job skill, and then they go on to make sure they're licensed and follow through to make sure that they actually have meaningful employment. And as a result, they're the flip side of what you see in the penal system, which has a dismal record, has an upper 60 percentile recidivism rate. So that's where we need to put our money. We need to expand these programs, and we know they work. The problem is we don't have the will. It's not apparent that we don't have it. And we need people in positions like Larry Krasner, like the 5 or 6 other progressive candidates in California now that are running for various county prosecution positions.
I think that's such an important message. leadership that's strong and progressive can make a difference. We get so exasperated and dejected over this system, but the messages that you have communicated here, if you could communicate them from this leadership position, they could really lead a change. The website to support Dean Johansson for District Attorney in Yolo County, deanforda.com. If you want to donate, deanforda.com/donate. And the 4 is the number 4. So Dean, the number 4, DA.com. Dean Johansson, good luck in the primary on June 5th, and thank you for joining us on Rebel Headquarters.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.